people hear that hype and they hear that AI is laying people off. But the reality is this technology really empowers people. If I can empower you as one of my employees to produce more revenue or do things faster and be more productive, why do I want to get rid of you? I want to hire 3 more of you to produce that much more revenue. And part of it is just taking away, helping them understand what I'm trying to take away from you is the toil, the mundane, repetitive stuff, and let you focus on the thing that brings you joy.
Well, Shawn, it's great to have you here, a fellow West Pointer, class of '94. You were CEO of an AI company for 9 years, right?
Correct. Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit about your journey over the past several years and what brought you into AI?
Absolutely, and first and foremost, thanks for having me, Tom. My AI journey, as embarrassed as I might be able to say age-wise, started over 30 years ago. West Point, 1992, took my first artificial intelligence course. So I was a computer science major at West Point, went into the Army, did Signal Corps, which stayed tied to technology, and went through my career doing technology. After I got out of the Army, went into the dot-com boom, building technology companies. After September 11th, went back into government service doing counterterrorism work using both technology and some AI in order to fight terrorism, and went back into building companies. And then 9 years ago, started a AI company using traditional AI. So I jokingly like to tell people we were doing AI before it became cool 3 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
But it was traditional data science, machine learning, and one of the things I've done for 30 years is I've always served on nonprofit boards. Mostly, well, they've always been either educational related or veteran service related. This year I did go on my first health related one, serving on the Zero Prostate Cancer Board. But in all of them, one of the things that frustrated me as a CS major, I would always get assigned to be the resident tech committee and analyze all the technology. And I got really frustrated with the big technology players that would come in and say, hey, circular nonprofit, we know what's best for you. Shove yourself into the square technology hole. And so what we wanted to do with Boodle was build a technology, an AI technology that was purpose built for the nonprofit community. And we did just that. We focused it on fundraisers and using data science to help fundraisers find their best donors. Ironically, most nonprofit boards are filled with a lot of corporate executives, and they saw what our technology could do, and they quickly wanted to bring that into their sales and marketing teams. And so we got into the commercial space as well. 3 years ago, with the launch of ChatGPT, we saw a wonderful opportunity in that although hundreds of millions of people signed up and created a haiku about their bowling team, they did nothing else with the technology. And so we wanted to build a net new platform focused on adoption of generative AI, actual collaboration, because right now people are kind of operating in little generative AI silos, and then doing so in a safe and secure manner with data. And so we created what's called Boodle Box that brings all of that together in one place.
Well, it sounds like you've had 30 years of some solid AI experience. What was AI like in the 90s?
Much different. And I mean, the reality is AI's been around since the 50s, and it's gone through a series of winters. Those winters were brought on by lack of data to begin with. AI feeds on data, whether you're doing traditional AI with your own proprietary data sets, or you're looking at generative AI with these billions of parameters going in to feed a large language model. Data has to drive it, and we didn't have a lot of that data available. The other thing we lacked all the way through up about 2000 was just the compute power of being able to do what they wanted to do. But if you look, the progression and the speed at which it's growing has been tenfold in just the past decade. What makes it most exciting is with the advent of generative AI, it's accessible to everybody. So traditional AI, you had to have a lot of money, you had to have a lot of data, you had to be able to do a lot of things. Now, a student, a receptionist, a CEO can all log into their personal instance of Gemini, Claude, or ChatGPT and start figuring out how it works and applies to their life.
So you're using these terms, generative AI and stuff. Can you explain that for people?
Sure. I mean, so traditional AI is built upon a largely predictive analytics. So looking at your data. In the case when we were working with nonprofits, I would look at my best major gift donors or my best donors who have donated 5 times. And I would use AI to build a model around what those people look like, and then I could apply that to all my first-time donors or a prospect list that I purchase, so that I'm not just mass emailing the entire 100,000 prospect list. Maybe I can narrow it down to about 10,000 people, which saves me a lot of money. Generative AI is generating net new information. So it's built on a vast amount of data that's brought in, not a particular company's data, and allowing new things to be created. And so I can use it to help me write an email almost on a daily basis. I'll write an email that I think, oh, maybe this doesn't sound right. And I can feed that email into generative AI, and suddenly generative AI makes it a little bit better. I've used it to tutor my daughter in math. The way a 50-year-old man explains something is not necessarily the way an 11-year-old understands it. And amazingly, generative AI can put it in a phrase in a way that an 11-year-old would understand.
So when did the switch happen into generative AI? When did it start becoming mainstream?
I think with the launch of ChatGPT in the end of 22. Generative AI had started its first research, started around 2017. So it took companies a while to train the first models, put them together. But ChatGPT launched in 2022, and it was such a vast leap. And as I said, it was available to anybody. And it was available free. There are free versions of it. So it wasn't something I had to wait for my company to buy, and then I needed to go sit through hours of training. I could literally go to a website and I could start using it.
You saw a lot of different iterations of what the company was working on. Walk us through, maybe in a brief snapshot, how you guys iterated over those years.
Like any company, you iterate based on what feedback you're getting from the market, right? You build things. What we learned in the military, you don't need a 100% solution, right? The 80% solution, take it to market and figure out what the market really wants, drove a lot of what we did. Also, as I said, we took it initially to the nonprofit community, which it did very well there, but immediately started getting commercial interest. And so figuring out what is the way to evolve this that meets commercial needs as well. As we built BoodleBox, that was a completely separate technology focused on the generative space. The evolution was twofold. One, it was hearing what the market said. It was also driven by investors. We were raising money, and as we initially launched, we were focused on the workforce. We wanted this to be a workforce tool. And so we had marketing teams, sales teams, venture capital teams, all using the platform. As we met with venture capitalists, they kind of patted us on the head and said, that's cute, but ChatGPT can sell to everybody. You need to have a niche. What was fortunate for us is that was summer of 24. And right during that time, educators were realizing that 80% of their students, the study showed, were using this technology. And not just in the classroom. These students had used it to better their resumes, to prep for an interview, to plan their summer vacation. Right? It had integrated into what they were doing in their lives. And so educators came to us and said, can you help us figure out how to teach with this technology? And so a lot of what BoodleBox is today, is focused on how higher education can use this to prepare students for the workforce.
Well, it sounds like you guys did some successful pivots based on the market and investors. Let's talk about the state of the world in AI right now. So you're a fractional AI officer, is that right?
Correct.
Talk about what that is and what do you do to help companies?
Yeah, so again, although there's a lot of people who say they have adopted AI, McKinsey did a study back in July, MIT published a study last month in August, independently, and they both separately found 80 to 90% of companies have said that they've either invested or adopted AI. Less than 5% of them in both could show a direct increase to revenue or an improvement in EBITDA.
So less than 5% as of today?
Correct.
And why is that?
The biggest reason, well, the common factor in the 5% of companies who have been able to show an ROI is leadership. And so when I talk to boards, when I talk to CEOs, what I tell them is AI adoption, successful AI adoption, is about 10% AI, 90% leadership. So people need to see, the company needs to see that this is a leadership initiative, not an IT initiative. And both McKinsey and the MIT study cited two big factors. One was people are in fear of losing their jobs. And a lot of people, they're seeing a lot of hype out there. Salesforce announced they laid off half their workforce because AI is replacing them. Not entirely true. There are other companies that are laying people off because they want to cut costs. But the reality is this technology really empowers people. And if I can empower you as one of my employees to produce more revenue or do things faster and be more productive, why do I want to get rid of you? Right? I want to hire 3 more of you to produce that much more revenue. And so the company needs to hear their leadership say, we're doing this, I'm using this to make me a better CEO. I want you to be a better salesperson, a better customer success person. And part of it is just taking away, helping them understand what I'm trying to take away from you is the toil. The mundane, repetitive stuff that we didn't really hire you to do, but is just inherent to your job, and let you focus on the thing that brings you joy, your job, and what we really hired you for. The second big factor that was really surprising, I didn't expect to see out of the MIT study, is a lot of rank and file people that are not adopting the large part of the company is because of a fear around misuse of AI. It wasn't developed ethically, or I'm going to inadvertently release company data and get in a lot of trouble. And so CEOs and senior leadership teams need to be out there saying, here's our AI governance policy. Here's how you can use AI. And if you do this, you're within bounds. So people feel comfortable I'm not inadvertently going to do something that's going to get me fired.
So the first reason is the fear that they will be replaced by AI. So that's why people aren't using it. To me, I have a hard time understanding that, because if I use AI, I'll become a better worker, so I'll become more valuable. Where's that fear coming from? And let's talk about that a little bit more.
Well, the fear is coming from stories like Mark Benioff saying he's laid off half his workforce. From what I can tell, if you read a little bit deeper, a lot of Salesforce, they overhired a bit coming out of the pandemic, expecting more remote work, expecting more sales. AI is definitely, if a company has overhired or you have a merger and acquisition, there's places where AI can take some of that repetition out, but that happened before AI. When companies merged, there were always redundancies and that left. So, but people hear that hype and they hear that AI is laying people off. And that's why if a leader can get out there and say, no, I'm doing this to empower you, and I'm doing this so you can provide more to the company. And what we're going to do is we're not all fighting for a small piece of the pie, we're making the pie bigger, and we're all going to benefit from that.
So you talked about 5% of companies are actually getting a positive ROI. I like the story that the electric motor was invented 50 years before it started being used in factories, because steam power was really the driver in factories, and they had to change their processes. Same thing happened with the PC revolution. It was a couple of decades before we saw a positive ROI. AI seems to be working much faster. Why are we only seeing 5% of positive ROI?
A lot of companies are adopting by saying, hey, company, you can use AI, but they're not giving them any direction. And so Tom gets to use ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini at his work, and he turns his 60-hour work week into 45 hours. It's benefit to Tom, he's getting his job done faster, but nothing that Tom is doing is being directed towards the company's business strategy. So the leaders that have been successful, the companies that have been successful, they're taking those skills as they develop, the generative AI skills or the AI skills, and directing them towards the business strategy, so that you're directly focusing on how are we increasing revenue or how are we decreasing our costs to better what the company's doing.
So it sounds like to me that that companies and employees are playing really small. They're saying, hey, I'm going to use ChatGPT to make my emails faster, better, but not really enhancing the big picture to have an impact on the bottom line. Is that right?
If you look more holistically at how you can use this, and this is why I tell companies, if you really want to get your team to adopt it, make them commit to using it for 30 days, 10 to 15 minutes a day, and not just work days. Use it on the weekends as well, because no one came home after getting their Salesforce training to the family dinner table and says, oh, look at this cool filter I can do on my CRM. But you can bring this technology home and come up with recipes or plan your family vacation or do a variety of other things. And as people start to integrate it more into their lives, whether it's their personal life or their work life, they start to expand the use cases. And so you're right, there's a lot of people, they got taught how to use it to do their emails, and that's all it does. It's that one function. And people need to spend 10 to 15 minutes a day over the course of a month understanding where are the other points in my daily workflow or my daily personal life that this technology can actually apply and make my life better.
Well, at CareerNerds, Shawn, we have people in many different areas: operations, marketing, sales, different leadership roles. What's 3 ways that people can start tomorrow leveraging AI to help them become much better at what they're doing in the corporate world?
I love this, because with generative AI especially, there are so many tools out there, and that actually stops a lot of executives from digging in.
They're overwhelmed.
They're overwhelmed by, what do I go after? One thing I always tell people is go find yourself your AI human buddy. And don't do it in your industry. Find someone outside of your industry because they're going to explore different tools.
What do you mean by that?
So I have a friend who started a company, he got acquired, he's a chief innovation officer now at a large CRM company. We talk once a week and we talk about what tools we found, what things we're learning. Half the tools I know about, I've learned from him. And probably half the tools he knows about, he's learned from me.
So you're talking the buddy system we learned in the Army, right?
Exactly, 100%. And it works, right? Yeah. Because I'm able to understand things and expand into different roles that I might not naturally have if I were just going about this on my own. It also helps with that overwhelming feeling. No one's going to understand all the tools. I saw a LinkedIn post recently. Someone cited that since the launch of ChatGPT, there have been 30,000 generative AI companies launched.
That's a lot.
No one's going to learn all 30,000. So what are the things you can do immediately? One is if you're not using ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, probably if you're not using one of the tools, start using it. And as I said, just start using it 10 to 15 minutes a day.
Okay, what should they start using it?
What, say again?
What kind of things should they start using those tools for? We talked about writing emails.
Yep.
What else?
Emails, research. So as I get asked to look at companies or I get ready to meet with a private equity firm, the first thing I do is turn to one of the tools and ask it to do research. One of the greatest tools across all of them is a functionality called deep research. So when I came out of the Army, I went to consulting and I was the young consultant who would get told, I need to know about this company. And my next 3 days were just spent researching that company. And then by Thursday, if that would given to me on Monday, Thursday I would sit with the partner in the firm and be very proud of the report I'd put together. That 3 days of work can now be done in about 20 minutes with deep research. So you can use one of these tools and let it know exactly what you're trying to gather, what you're trying to understand, and what will come back as a 10, 20, 30-page report with sources. So you're not done, you now need to go through and you need to read that, but that 3 days you were going to spend doing all the research is now condensed down to 20 minutes. Yeah, so you asked about 3 tools. One is just pick one of the generative models and use that in your daily workflow. 2 is Notebook LM. So Notebook LM is a tool made by Google. I was actually very frustrated by Google by not advertising it. And about a month ago, I was able to talk with one of Google's engineers, and they said it was a deliberate decision. Because they were afraid as Google, if they put out a use case and you, Tom, read that use case and it didn't apply to you, you would never try their tool. And so they just released the tool and they have seen, he said, hundreds of use cases that they never imagined their tool being used for because people didn't know what it was used for and they just started playing with it. So what Notebook LM does is you can take a report, it could be up to 300 pages. You could take 50 reports and you can put them all in and it will create a 10, 20, 30, 40-minute podcast of a man and a woman talking about that report. And so, almost on a daily basis, I will come across a McKinsey report, a Bain report, a Goldman Sachs report that is 50, 100, 150 pages long. And just to skim it would take me half an hour, 40 minutes. Now what I'm able to do is load it in Notebook LM. It takes it about 10 minutes. I get a 20-minute podcast. It's a 10-minute drive to my gym in the morning. I listen to the first half of the report on the way. I listen to the second half on the way back. And so how that applies to sales or customer success people is I wrote a report last month on how AI can be used in private equity. Sent it out to a series of private equity professionals.
And that was about 30 pages, right?
It's about 25 pages. And what I also did though was I put the report along with all 50 sources that I had used to write that report into Notebook LM. And then asked Notebook LM to create a very concise, cogent 10-minute podcast about it. And I sent it out. And I've had over a dozen of the PE people write me back and say, I saw it was over 20 pages. I wasn't going to read it. I was standing in the security line at the airport and I listened to it and something the woman said resonated with one of my portfolio companies. And so I went into the report and read the report. So salespeople now who have proposals or customer success people who have new product information that a client may not open up and read through can now put this 10-minute podcast together and people sit in their cars, they walk to Starbucks, they go for walks, they can listen to it and they can use that if it's done right to drive them into the actual material you want them to see.
I really like how you do this. It's kind of like the movie trailer. You
Yes.
give like a 1 or 2 minute clip to see what the movie's about.
Correct.
And you get people interested in that. I'm surprised more people aren't doing that. Why do you think?
It's just a lack of knowledge of the tools that are out there. So when I talk to CEOs about it, well over 80% of the CEOs write me within a month or two and tell me how they're using it. And what's neat is I'll get some CEOs to write me and tell me ways I hadn't thought about using it. Like they have gone on to discover new ways to use it. And that was Google's whole hope. They wanted people to explore it, and that's why they really haven't advertised it.
Let's build on how people can start using it in their work. What are other ways that we can start using it today to be more effective in our corporate jobs?
The biggest thing is just experimentation and going back to if leaders need to build a culture of innovation in their company, you need to have a culture of innovation yourself. And you need to be willing to try tools that are not going to work. I've tried dozens of AI tools that just have no application to what I'm doing. Not that they're bad AI tools, it just doesn't fit with my daily workflow. I don't need it. But tools such as recording tools. If an executive today is not using recording tools in their calls, they're missing out on a lot. Now, the old way would have been trying to go through all my notes. The newer way would have been listening to the 30-minute recording. Instead, what I did was I went right into the AI I used and I said, Martin asked for 3 things, what were they? 10 seconds later, they all popped up. I'm like, oh, that's right. And now I was able to start, right? So that saved me half an hour of my time that I was able to focus on working on what I needed to work on. People don't hire people to go back and look through notes. They hire them to get things done. So if you're not using recordings in the tools, I thought it was fascinating, the recording tool you showed me today. I haven't used that tool. And that's why you want as much networking and interaction as you can do with other people and finding out what they're using, you're gonna learn more. If people have to do presentations, PowerPoint's still very prolific in a lot of business settings. I mentioned I was the guy who had to do all the research. I was also the guy who had to go make slides as a young consultant. Today, it would take me longer to go to a 25-year-old and tell them what I wanted in a slide and wait for them to come back than it is to use tools like Gamma or Plus AI or others and just have it work with me as in a collaborative process to get the slide done.
Yeah, I find that there's a lot of tools out there and like recording calls. Sometimes I see more recorders than people on Zoom
I have
calls,
seen that.
which is quite funny. But people actually have to use it. They have to go into the transcript and use it to actually prepare themselves for the next call. And I find that behavior sometimes is missing. They're like, yeah, the call is recorded, the transcript is there, but they actually have to go in and find the summary and actually use the information. How can we as business leaders get people to actually use the tools that we're already using?
So part of it is being a leader. I'll give a great example. So I told you I sit on the board of Zero Prostate Cancer. The CEO there is a woman named Courtney. Courtney literally goes every week into their weekly meeting and lets people know new ways she's used AI.
Wow.
And so her organization has 100% adoption of AI. Everybody in the organization uses it. She told me at one point, she was sitting in a meeting and someone called one of their teammates out for not having used generative AI in what they produced. Because in their mind, it pulled everybody back from where they could be.
How are you using it for ideation, brainstorming?
I've not stared at a white page in 2 years. So it's just a quick brainstorming. One of the hacks I do is if I know I'm giving a speech, I will load into a chat all the information about the organization I'm speaking to. I'll upload maybe a couple of past presentations, and then I get on the elliptical with my earbuds and I just start talking to ChatGPT. And she and I go through the whole slide presentation and I'll say, hey, this slide is really good, but I need to gear it towards the marketing industry. What are 3 really good examples? And she'll come back with 3 examples and I'll say, oh, I like this one. What other data do we have? And over the course of 45 minutes on an elliptical, I can build out the substance I need for 10 slides, right? And so it's that ability just to work with someone on a regular basis that whether I'm in an Uber and I've got downtime, I'm standing in the security line, all those things that we used to say, I got to go work on this next time I sit down at my computer. Now I don't need to wait anymore. I can take advantage of all of those times. And I'm a very big believer in a work-life balance. And so where a lot of us have to go spend a lot of time working, we pull away from working out, we pull away from family. Now we can take advantage of all those little times we have, which adds up, and allow ourselves more time to focus on the other areas outside of work.
Yeah, that's a good point, is seeing how AI can actually help us have more work-life balance. And a lot of people say the advancement of AI will allow us to actually be more human. Let's talk about that.
So it's funny because going back to the nonprofit space, nonprofits really were adverse to AI because they thought it would make it less personal.
Yeah.
And if I'm taking money from you, I need to be very personal in our
Yeah.
engagement. What nonprofits are finding, it's the exact opposite. It allows them to be more personal. So a really good example, 2 different fundraisers came to us at one point, told us they felt like, and they had about 2,000 donors in their database, but they had a very small team. And they said, it felt like the only time I talk to my donors is to ask them for money, thank them for money, or send the annual report. Well, they had a very good database where they knew that Tom liked international and Tom liked Army football, and they had all information in there about him. And what they did was they used generative AI, and every Monday they would have generative AI write 10 emails to the next 10 donors that were bespoke emails to that individual. They uploaded the annual report, so it would pull a little bit of information from the annual report, but it never asked for money. And they said and to write 10 emails from scratch after going and researching the individual, all of that could take all day, right? They said they come in the Monday morning, those 10 emails are written, it took them about half an hour to proofread them and go through, because if it has you in there as Thomas, you want to write Tom, right? And so they would change things and do that, but send them out. Both of them said they had over a 20% unsolicited donation rate.
Wow.
People responded to those emails with a donation even though they weren't asked. So this actually can empower us to become more personal in our engagement.
So when someone is networking and trying to network with the right people and accelerate their career, what's the best way to use AI to prep for a networking call so that they're getting the most out of it?
Again, it's how do I make myself more personal, and how do I make better use of that person's time? One of the things I do, networking, we talked about, has often become kind of a negative term. And I think one of the reasons is a lot of people who network, it's all about me. What can you do for me, Tom? I'm talking to you because I need help. Every conversation I have, whether I need help or whether I'm offering help, I ask, what can I do to be helpful?
And they come unprepared.
Or yes, if someone comes unprepared. So someone walks in prepared to the meeting, I feel good about it, I want to talk to more people. I told you I will always talk to grads. When I got out of the Army, I had no idea what I was going to do for a living. This was before cell phones, long before LinkedIn. And I reached out to 10 grads, and all 10 called me back. Four of them I left calls on an answering machine. There weren't even voicemails back then. But they all called me back. Some of them to tell me, hey, there's nothing really I can do
so
to
you
help
got a 100% conversion rate
100%
talking
conversion
to other Academy grads.
Correct.
Wow.
And it was very powerful. And I was 25 at the time, and one of the things I committed to is when I'm in that position, I will always take a call from a grad. And I do. Weekly, I'm on a call with some grad who's networking, trying to figure out where they want to do professionally, transitioning out of the military. And if I can provide those insights now, happy to do so. But I feel a lot better about taking those calls when that person gets on and they're better prepared and they're asking more insightful questions. They're not just kind of winging it or seeing if I'm just going to suddenly offer them a job. And so as if I were sitting in a position right now where I were trying to network and either actively for a job or kind of passively, every call I got on, I would prepare. And I do it. I take every call I get on even to help a grad, I load their LinkedIn profile in. I do a quick ChatGPT or Perplexity search to find out if there's any publicly available information. And I ask it, because ChatGPT knows my background, it knows who I am, where could I potentially offer help to this individual? And it may come up with 3 ideas that I never thought of before.
So let's talk about the limitations of AI, because I've seen this in myself. AI is not perfect, and we were launching a new marketing campaign where we used AI to do it, and we had a marketing manager work on it, and we launched it, and it totally bombed. And after the campaign, I put in the old messages and the new messages, and I said, AI, compare these two. And it said, the new messages are far better. And then I said, well, the results are that it barely got any traction, and the initial messages we had before were much better. And then it reanalyzed and said, okay, yeah, here's why. So for predicting marketing campaign success, I still feel that there's a lot of limitations. Let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm. So one is, we go back to adoption, the question you asked about adoption and why people aren't doing it. There's a mindset around AI that it's always going to be perfect, and it's not. And when I talk to CEOs, I ask them a question of, have you ever written a letter of recommendation for anyone? Mm-hmm. every CEO's written a letter of recommendation at some point. I said, great, and did that person, and would you rehire that person? Like, oh yeah, they were great. And I said, so this was a glowing recommendation. Oh, if I could have them back, I would. Did that person ever fail in their job? No one's perfect. Everybody fails, right? So we have a threshold of where we would write a glowing recommendation about someone, and we would hire them back even though we know they failed. We have to have the same expectation for technology and AI. It is not going to be perfect, but we have to have an expectation of what we expect it to get to. And so part of it is, yes, you went through that process you just talked about where, well, here were the results, here's what it's doing, and then it started to give you better results. It was part of that training, right? We hire new people on, they're going to mess things up, we train them, they get better, they move on. AI lives on data. It needs data. And so the more data you can give it, it may make some mistakes at the outset, but the more you work with it, the more you feed into it, the better it's going to get at what it does. Now, we have to be very careful in what we're going to put out public versus what we're going to test internally. So we're going through this. Zero Prostate wants to put a AI chatbot on its website so that as either a man is diagnosed with prostate cancer or someone who's caring for that man, they can have conversations. And they don't want to have voice conversations, they just want to do text. Well, you've got to be very careful what those text responses are going to be. And so one of the things the organization is going to do is they're going to test it with their staff for 6 months before they ever let someone see it front facing. And so we've got to be a little bit careful, and big companies are going through this in where they insert this into their customer success. How soon do we put this out there to a customer versus how do we use it internally? So Broadcom, they tested for over a year a tool to just deal with their IT issues. And they've gotten to a point now where 67% of their IT issues internally are solved within 60 seconds, allowing their IT department to focus on much bigger issues. But they're looking at and they're testing that technology to potentially be front-facing in what they use in customer success. But they didn't roll out day one and put that in front of customers. They used it internally where if it broke, it's an employee that's upset with it. It's not a customer that you're going to lose.
Well, that's interesting that you say that, because I was just fascinated by there wasn't an even close results in these two marketing campaigns. It totally bombed, and AI said that one was better because you built more credibility, but then we looked at it and it was too much too soon in terms of the messaging. How could AI get it so wrong? Because I was trying to predict, okay, which campaign is going to be more helpful?
Generative AI, I sometimes equate to my 6-year-old son. My 6-year-old son does not lie to me because he's a malicious bad person. He lies because he wants dad to be happy. Generative AI hallucinates, and if it doesn't have an answer, it will make one up.
As you look at the progress of AI, what's the next evolution that we're going to be seeing?
The big conversation right now is around agentic workflows, so the use of agents. I think where business leaders and executives really need to focus, and there's a growing conversation around this, is the most powerful AI is the human-machine team. It's a collaboration between the two. And if you're going to have agents working with humans to produce the best results for your company, you're not going to be able to have IT running the agents and HR running the humans. And so HR and IT are going to need to work together to figure out how we look at and analyze these agents as they come in. And it's going to need to take an HR lens on it, right? We don't hire someone just because we want to hire someone. We look at what need do we have, what's the job description, what do they need to accomplish, what do we expect them to return to the company? Well, as we look to build agents, we're going to need to do the same thing because it's not a trivial in terms of time or cost to build out these agents. And so what is it that we're going to expect and what do we want to see with success? And if we're going to have this agent interacting with a human, how do the two do so?
So it sounds like we have to be much more integrated between the technology side and the business side.
Correct.
In our companies, right? So Shawn, let me ask you one final question.
Yeah.
How will AI impact executives and managers as they move up the corporate ladder into higher and more responsibility?
There's a couple of ways that it will impact them. One is it's going to allow them to do more with their teams. So as they lead teams, if they empower their teams with these tools, they're going to be able to accomplish more even if they have more limited resources. As those same leaders, though, are looking to potentially move either up within their organization or potentially lateral into another organization, I think most companies, as they interview people, are going to be asking about how they've used AI. And for one of two reasons. Either the company that's interviewing them already has established how they use AI, and they want to make sure they're hiring someone that fits in that culture and not someone they're going to have to train. Or the company is trying to figure out their own AI strategy and they want to hire someone in who has it. So an executive who has these skills brings something extremely valuable into companies without it right now. Or companies that are not successful, which is, according to MIT, 95% of the companies right now that are trying to adopt AI.
So what I hear you saying, not only should executives and professionals be using AI to network and advance their careers, but they will be asked how they use AI in their roles to be that thought leader for the company, right?
I've already seen people on their resumes as part of their bullets. One of the big things you tell people on bullets, put numbers in there. Mm-hmm. People are already talking about how the use of AI has led to a certain number of results. And I think you're going to see more and more of that on LinkedIn profiles as well as resumes.
So AI is going to be front and center in people's careers over the next few years.
But again, AI is not the be all and end all, right? Sometimes it's just a good technology. LinkedIn, while it has AI aspects to it, LinkedIn is a technology. And it's a great tool that executives can use, and you help executives use it on a daily basis. So executives need to treat their career the same way they treat their professional, their company, which is, what is the problem I'm trying to solve? If I'm trying to network out, is AI what I should really be using? Is there just a better technology? Or is there a human interaction that I just need to be doing, right? And if AI can free me up to spend more time meeting with people and pressing the flesh, that personal touch is still going to make a difference.
And I think you said at the beginning, it's about business strategy, business processes, how AI can support both of those, but it's really about leading with strategy in the process, right?
Correct. Yeah. So I have many CEOs and board members who will come and say, hey, can you help build our AI strategy? And I tell them, no, you have a business strategy. And if suddenly you have two strategies in a company, the company is going to be trying to figure out which way they're supposed to go. So what I like to do is help build an AI roadmap that builds AI as a core strategic asset, the same way a team is a core strategic asset. But in both cases, they empower the business strategy. They move the business strategy forward.
Well, Shawn, thanks a lot for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
Here in
Really
Austin.
appreciate it.
Thank you.